It was supposed to be just another flight. The kind of journey that plays out thousands of times a day around the world, passengers boarding, pilots running final checks, engines roaring to life, and families waving goodbye. But what happened aboard Air India Flight 171 on that scorching June morning in 2025 defied every expectation, every protocol, and every ounce of logic that modern aviation rests upon. In less than 60 seconds after takeoff, a state-of-the-art Boeing 787 Dreamliner transformed into a blazing nightmare, shattering not only buildings but also trust in the very systems meant to keep us safe. And while the official report claimed mechanical failure, a growing chorus of independent investigators, simulation analysts, and aviation experts are warning, the real cause may be something far more disturbing. Because when you dig deeper into the wreckage, into the black box data, the cockpit voices, the fuel switches, and the eerie silence of failed safety systems, what emerges is not a tale of unfortunate coincidence, but one of unsettling contradiction. This is the hidden story of Flight 171, and what you're about to hear changes everything. The sun rose over Ahmedabad with the kind of blazing heat that warps the horizon and pushes engines to their thermal limits. On the tarmac, Air India Flight 171 gleamed with promise, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner prepped for a long-haul journey to London. Inside, families snapped selfies, business travelers drafted emails, and students cradled backpacks and excitement in equal measure. In the cockpit sat two highly experienced pilots, a captain with over 15,000 flight hours and a seasoned first officer with more than 3,400. Together, they embodied the calm competence passengers expect but rarely notice. Everything appeared normal until the jet began its rollout. Because the aircraft was not only fully loaded with passengers and cargo, but was also fighting against the invisible pressure of a scorching summer air mass. As it accelerated, lifting skyward, it appeared to defy the heat and weight, until it didn't. Within moments of liftoff, the Dreamliner began to sag, veering slightly to the left, flying too low, too fast, too wrong. Eyewitnesses watched in horror as the aircraft skimmed treetops, clipped a chimney, and then, in a surge of noise and flames, tore through the buildings of BJ Medical College. What followed was carnage, explosions, chaos, and a fuselage shattered across city blocks. But even as the wreckage smoldered, a deeper question ignited. How could a perfectly functional jet, with experienced pilots and full thrust, fall from the sky like that? While firefighters battled the inferno, investigators scrambled for answers. Their first priority, the black boxes, the flight data recorder, and the cockpit voice recorder, designed to survive the very worst of aviation disasters. And yet, almost immediately, something was off. The emergency locator transmitter, meant to broadcast the aircraft's position on impact, was silent. No beacon, no signal. Only smoke and chaos guided first responders to the wreckage. When the recorders were finally found, the second shock hit. One of them, supposedly indestructible, was obliterated beyond recovery. Only the forward unit contained usable data, but even that was incomplete. It revealed a chilling fact. The engines were shut down manually, not failed, not stalled, shut down. The logs showed the guarded fuel cutoff switches, physical levers that required deliberate movement, were flipped off seconds apart. And yet, the voice recording painted a scene of confusion, not sabotage. One pilot shouts, "Why did you turn it off?" The other replies, "I didn't." These few words opened a void of speculation. Had someone else been in the cockpit? Were they confused? Were they lying? Was this a hijack or a suicide mission masked as an accident? Or had the cockpit itself turned into a place of unintentional betrayal? Whatever the answer, this wasn't just mechanical failure. It was something more terrifying, human action without explanation. When official explanations left more questions than answers, independent experts took matters into their own hands. Armed with surveillance footage from buildings across Ahmedabad, they began to digitally reconstruct Flight 171's final moments, frame by frame, speed by speed. And what they found contradicted everything. Their simulation showed the aircraft was accelerating, not slowing, right before impact, gaining speed even though both engines had supposedly been shut down. How was that possible? Was the data flawed, Or was the official report hiding something? And the questions didn't stop there. The aircraft never retracted its landing gear, another anomaly. Normally, gear is pulled in once the jet climbs safely, but the Dreamliner never stabilized enough to make that call. Instead, it kept fighting against drag, climbing erratically, then plunging. Aviation rules say a double engine failure should produce a nose-down glide, not a powered dive into obstacles. But Flight 171 didn't glide. It drove itself into destruction. Why? How? The simulation didn't offer answers. It simply magnified the mystery. And what it left behind was a chilling conclusion. If the official narrative didn't match the physical evidence, then something else was at play. Perhaps the most haunting part of Flight 171's story isn't just what happened, but what didn't. The very systems designed to bring clarity after catastrophe, the ELT, the black boxes, the backup power sources, failed when the world needed them most. Why did only one black box survive, despite both being designed to endure identical conditions? Why did the ELT fall silent, rendering the wreckage harder to find? Why did the engine's cutoff switches behave as if manipulated, despite no clear evidence of who did it? And most disturbing of all, why were all these failures concentrated in a single section of the aircraft's structure? Some suggested manufacturing flaws. Others whispered of conspiracy. A few dared to hint at sabotage. Whatever the explanation, it became clear to the families, the aviation community, and the world watching that Flight 171 was more than a crash. It was a chain of breakdowns, technical and human, that didn't add up, each layer peeling back to reveal yet another mystery. And with every answer came another question. How could a Dreamliner, one of the safest jets ever made, collapse into flames less than a minute after takeoff, without a single clear reason? As investigators continued to analyze the limited cockpit voice data available, something chilling surfaced in the final seconds before impact. Buried in the static, between alarms and the violent rattling of the descending aircraft, was the co-pilot's voice, barely audible but clear enough to shake the inquiry to its core. He says, "Why is the system overriding me?" That single sentence unleashed a storm of new questions. What system? The flight control software? The engine management interface? Was the aircraft itself resisting pilot input? Aviation systems are designed with multiple fail-safes. Yet in that instant, it seemed the controls were no longer responding as expected. The implications were terrifying. Could the aircraft have autonomously rejected human commands? Was the plane following its own logic, one that the pilots couldn't override? And if so, what triggered that protocol? Was it a glitch, a cybersecurity breach, or something even more unsettling? A failure of artificial assistance that was never accounted for in training or documentation? As forensic analysts replayed the audio again and again, the line repeated like a ghost trapped in the machine. Why is the system overriding me? As modern aircraft have become increasingly reliant on digital fly-by-wire systems, a new vulnerability has emerged: automation dependency. Flight 171, like all Dreamliners, used an advanced control architecture where pilot input is filtered through a central flight computer that prioritizes safety and stability. But what happens when the system itself malfunctions, or worse, when it misinterprets a situation and acts against the crew's intent? Data from the FDR revealed a bizarre series of trim and thrust commands issued not by the pilot's hands, but by the aircraft's onboard logic. In the final 12 seconds, just before the engines cut out, the plane performed two minor adjustments, subtle, almost imperceptible, but inconsistent with pilot actions during a critical emergency. These weren't corrections. They were decisions that seemingly accelerated the aircraft into a fatal trajectory. Boeing engineers insisted the software behaved as expected. But some experts disagreed, pointing to a narrow but documented history of automated misfires in high-heat conditions, like the ones present that day. It was no longer a question of pilot error or mechanical failure. It was now a question of control. And on that day, it looked like the pilots weren't the ones in command. In the moments after takeoff, Air India 171 made no distress call. Not a single mayday, no pan-pan, no contact with tower control, silence. But 3 minutes after impact, as emergency teams scrambled, An aviation enthusiast monitoring open-band frequencies captured something strange, a short, clipped transmission, repeating the same phrase, "Request reset. Request reset." The signal was weak, fragmented, and not broadcast on standard frequencies. Some dismissed it as interference, but digital analysis revealed it originated from Flight 171's communication range, using a modulation pattern consistent with maintenance diagnostics, not human speech. In other words, it wasn't the pilots, it was the aircraft. How was that possible after the crash? Was it an automated distress ping? A self-diagnostic failing? Or was some part of the aircraft's onboard system still trying to connect, still trying to correct, still trying to restart? The more investigators dug, the stranger it became. Boeing systems are not programmed to send voice-looped requests post-impact. Yet there it was. The reset signal, broadcast from the wreckage like the dying breath of a machine that didn't understand it had already perished. Of all the mysteries surrounding Flight 171, perhaps none is more confounding than the fire itself. The 787 Dreamliner is built with composite materials specifically designed to resist combustion. Fuel tanks are protected, sealed with anti-explosion foam and sensors that trigger auto-suppression systems. But in the case of Flight 171, the post-impact fire didn't just ignite, it raged uncontrollably. Witnesses described explosions minutes after the crash, far beyond the initial impact. Forensic teams found that much of the fire originated not from ruptured fuel tanks, but from within the electrical systems. How could that be? The power should have been cut. Emergency systems should have discharged. And yet, components were still surging, wires melted from the inside out, and emergency batteries designed to shut off appeared to have overcharged instead. Was this a chain reaction of electronic failure? Or was there an energy source still alive, still pulsing after the crash? And if so, why? Some investigators began to ask a question that felt more like science fiction than aviation engineering. What if the aircraft's systems didn't shut down because they weren't allowed to? Not by the pilots, not by the software, but by something else. We look to the skies with faith. Faith in technology, in design, in human skill and protocols refined by tragedy after tragedy. But what happens when all of that fails at once? What happens when two trained pilots are overridden, when safety systems fall silent, when recorders go blank, and when a jet that should have flown safely for 12 hours burns itself into the ground less than 60 seconds after takeoff? The official report tried to explain it. It pointed at probable engine issues, fuel cutoff anomalies, and vague suggestions of pilot confusion. But if you listen closely, truly listen, what it doesn't say is louder than what it does. It doesn't explain why one black box was destroyed beyond recognition. It doesn't explain why cockpit commands were overridden. It doesn't explain why every system meant to preserve human life instead contributed to its destruction. And it certainly doesn't explain that ghostly digital whisper, "Request reset," still looping in the static long after the flames died. Flight 171 wasn't just an accident. It was a failure of trust, a moment when man and machine lost their delicate balance, and for the 210 souls on board, that imbalance became fatal. But the real question is not what happened. The real question is, how many more times will it happen before someone finally tells the truth? What do you believe happened aboard Flight 171? Was it a cascade of mechanical failures, an automation gone rogue, or something the official report was never allowed to mention? Leave your theory in the comments. Smash that like button if you believe the families of Flight 171 deserve better answers. And hit subscribe, because this is just one story in a sky full of secrets. And we're just getting started. The next time a plane vanishes, crashes, or spirals into silence, we'll be here to ask the questions they won't.